we are going to use the exact same methodology they had used and simply expanded time-wise. Their research captured years 75 to 2007. We will pick up where they left off, which is March 27, and conduct analysis until present time. We will use the exact same database that they have, search engines, keywords, and procedures. And what they've already accomplished is they collected through that search about 280 papers for the 30 years. We are focusing on 3 years, about 3 years. We already found 500 following the exact same methodology. Out of these, they selected 113 of papers which had applicable recommendations. For us, it's already 85. The similar procedure will be developed for mitigation, for identifying objective end strategies. We will not have a dominant research that we will refer to, but we will try to make sure that the procedures are parallel in order to make both adaptation and mitigation strategies and objectives developed in a very similar way. Each strategy will then have a set of actions that we would be proposing, and these actions would be, of course, taken from published literature, but also from internal reports, documents, management plans, as well as conversations with managers. We already started meeting with them and asking specifically about which actions are applicable, which are feasible to implement. Some of the actions that we will end up proposing will be different, and they're specifically related to climate change, but many, if not most, would actually be things that managers are already doing on the ground. What will differ, though, is the context in which they will need to be applied. The first obvious difference is the change. That changing climate would force us to think about adaptation and mitigation in a dynamic framework, specifically in the framework of adaptive management. What also will change is the stress imposed both on the ecosystem, species, but also on managers with the amount of work that they would need to be doing, and stress on budgets, which are already pretty stressed. So obviously we can't solve all of those issues, but what this research is proposing is to help organize the tools that managers have within their reach in order to adopt and mitigate climate change. In order to bring all that general talk into more concrete examples, let's look at adaptation in forestry. If we set as a goal to minimize non-climatic threats, then we can develop several strategies that would lead us to reach that goal. That would be to minimize insect and disease disturbance, to control invasives, or manage natural disturbances. And now each of those strategies will have a set of actions. For example, to minimize insect and disease disturbance, one may consider planting resistant genotypes, resistant to insects and diseases, to apply sanitation cuts to remove diseased trees, to shorten rotation lengths in order to shorten the time where the stand is vulnerable to diseases and insects, and also to promote regeneration. In order to control for invasives, we can, and already most managers practice early detection through frequent monitoring, practice aggressive removal, and plan carefully timing of road maintenance in order to help the invasive species to actually spread their seeds. So management for natural disturbances, one can apply and also tag prescribed burning, as well as apply assisted regeneration. So in terms of managing fires, we can plant trees with thicker bark Now, on the other side, we will have mitigation, and the example that I have is related to another landscape, to grassland. One of the objectives we may have in managing grassland would be to maximize below-ground sequestration. And one of the strategies would be to maximize productivity. Another would be to adjust fire regime. And another one would be to manage for perennial grassland. This picture I wanted to bring to your attention since I find it fascinating. This shows comparison of the root system and compares the capacity of annuals versus perennials in capturing the below ground sequestration, pointing obviously to the fact that perennials are doing a much better job. Now, moving from those objectives and strategies to action. In order to maximize productivity, we can plant more productive varieties of grasses. We can permit grazing. In certain cases, we may even think about irrigation if drought occurs, which is not impossible to expect. Then we could work on adjusting fire regimes through annual burnings and spring fires that warm up the ground and allowed species to grow faster. Finally, in order to manage for perennial grasslands, we can seed perennials. Now, not to overwhelm you with examples, but I wanted to present one more example on the mitigation side in the context of forestry, in order to then be able to talk about the trade-off between mitigation and adaptation in forestry. So, if the objective for mitigation is to maximize above-ground sequestration for forestry, we would like to maximize structural complexity, maximize productivity, and be careful in choosing the logging practices that we apply. In order to maximize complexity, we would like to have uneven age stand. We would also want to keep high level of post-harvest structural retention and do not apply fuel reduction treatment. So leave all of that material in the forest. In order to maximize productivity, one can reduce the damage to residual stands. We could also manipulate vegetation to promote rapid growth, as well as at the same time keep high levels of post-harvest structural retention, which is the exact same action that also is applicable to maximize structural complexity. And that would often happen, that the same action would help in several different strategies. And finally, for choosing logging practices, we would like to practice low-intensity forestry and extend rotation. Longer rotations lead to larger trees, lead to more carbon sequesters. It doesn't mean that it's happening at a faster rate, though, but it definitely maximizes the objective. And now we can look at the interaction between what can be a goal in forest management in the context of climate change. So the objective is to maximize above-ground sequestration and to minimize non-climatic threats. We would need to solve some contradictory recommendations. One would relate to the rotation length and the other one to fire treatment. If we want to maximize the above-ground sequestration, longer rotations would make more sense, as opposed to shorter rotations in order to minimize non-climatic threats. Same issue would appear with fire treatment. The suggestion would be not to apply fuel reduction treatment if we want to maximize the above-ground sequestration, but on the other hand, to prescribe burning in order to minimize the non-climatic threat. And this is a good illustration for what we are trying to accomplish. None of it is to be a prescription of what managers should do. We are not going to provide help in choosing. We are not going to provide suggestions in which of those objectives is going to be more important and which actual action should be implemented. But what we do want to do is to provide a map and that points out that there are trade-offs and that different objectives sometimes will require opposite actions taken. We want to make sure that the managers are aware of it and that they include it in their decision-making process. At the same time, the decision is theirs, since especially in making all of the management decisions, not only climate change is a consideration, but many more other ones as well. In order to provide that help, we are hoping to use decision analysis, and we are developing a decision-making tool that will provide that clear guidance in what are the options and what are the trade-offs between them. And that is the plan for the first year. For the second year, we are hoping to build on what we will accomplish in the first year. So we will have the map of what can be done and what practically is applicable. And then we would like to actually go and see how in practice those theoretically feasible actions and strategies can be implemented. We would go and talk to the managers and try to figure out what strategies, what actions are most likely to be taken and why, and what will not and why. Hopefully, by looking at which strategies are less likely, we will be able to find patterns and maybe provide suggestions of how to remove those barriers or minimize them. So the method that we are planning to use would be to conduct a survey of managers. This would be a web-based survey instrument. And then, based on the results, introduce some spatial analysis, looking possibly for spatial patterns in management that hopefully could shed some light on what's most possible and what's least possible. Finally, in order to frame the issue for the final presentation, we would conduct some more in-depth interviews with the managers in order to clarify the whole picture. And that would conclude year 2 of the project. Going back for a second to year 1, we are hoping to finish the literature review on adaptation in April. We were hoping for that, and we already accomplished that. The review is completed. In a couple of months, we are expecting to finish a literature review on mitigation. We are hoping to be done in June. Then we will work on the decision analysis tool and deliver it in August. And by October 2011, we should complete the final report on the theoretical map of mitigation and adaptation in management on the site level. Thank you so much. Now I'm giving the mic back to Olivia for some more information.
So I just wanted to acknowledge a few folks that have been really helpful in the process, primarily for funding for the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes LCC and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. But our lead contacts for workshops have been very helpful in providing information, connecting us with people within their agencies or institutions. And then we've had multiple